Guys, gals, and indeed non-binary pals, welcome back again to Rhyme Signatures, where we are going to be doing a new discography ranking. Now, I've done a few of these on the channel already, but I really wanted to get my teeth into Opeth this time round. Lovely, wonderful, fabulous Opeth. Now, obviously, this is all very much just how I personally feel about all 13 studio albums of the band. Don't get too excited when yours isn't at the top or yours is at the bottom or whatever way around it's going to be. Because of how shall I put it, how different Opeth became after a certain point in their discography, it's very easy for somebody to either be fully dismissive of their earlier works or their later work. But I personally err on the side of every part of Opeth ultimately is pretty damn good, you know. I don't feel there are any particularly bad albums in their discography. There are always going to be albums that I prefer to others, and obviously something has to be at the bottom spot. But when all is said and done, no matter what I'm about to say about any of the albums on this list, I love everything Opeth have done. I do feel quite strongly that there is not a single weak record amongst their 13 studio albums at the moment. So let's get right into it, guys. I don't have everything on physical media yet, you know, bad me, whatever, and the record labels don't really like it when you use audio samples on YouTube of Opeth, so you just got to put up with my talking and that's it, guys, and some graphics which I'll throw up around here if I don't happen to have the album on physical media. Anyway, enough of my waffling, let's get started at number 13. Yes, kids, it's not Heritage. Whoa! I know, right? Most people will put Heritage at the bottom, but not me. My least favourite Opeth album is Sorceress. I know, some of you out there are probably gnashing your teeth and wailing and screaming and telling me that I'm basically wrong. As I said though, don't get me wrong here. I love everything Opeth have done. Sorceress, still great, still love it. Just don't love it as much as the rest of the albums. And I think ultimately why I had to put this one at the bottom compared to some of the other records is I just don't feel it's got enough of its own personality. There's not enough individualism going on here. It feels kind of like they were treading water in the new style that they had opted for. And it's still very good. Like I say, there are some great songs on here and everything flows really well. The production is spotty, admittedly. Not a huge fan of it, but I don't think it really detracts that much from the overall impact of the album. You know, it's still good. It's still fun. Got the best album artwork as far as I'm concerned of any Opeth album. You know, it's fantastic, so I will be looking to get this one on vinyl at some point. But I don't know, it just didn't hit me as much as the others. I felt it was the least memorable of their releases and possibly the least adventurous of their releases, which is a shame, but something had to be last place, and I'm one guy in the world who probably hasn't put Heritage at the bottom, so hooray for me, I guess. Right, number 12. It's Heritage! Hey! It just narrowly dodged the last place to be in 12th place anyway. Oh, yeah. No, I will not pretend otherwise. When Heritage first came out, when it first dropped, I hated it. I thought, oh no. I was not ready for that change in style. I was not ready for that shift in focus as to what Mikael Åkerfeldt and the boys wanted to do with their lives, you know. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't enjoy it. I did not appreciate it at all, and I thought it was really bad, and I just didn't listen to it for years after that. As I myself have aged and become a wiser, hopefully, man, I realised that Heritage is actually pretty good, you know? It's pretty good. It's not perfect, and I do feel that it's kind of a proof of concept as to what they were looking to do with this new direction in their careers, you know? It felt a little bit spotty, a little bit, you know, uncertain of their footing at times. Some parts of it don't really sound that great at the moment, but it still has some absolutely peak songs on it. Folklore is an amazing song. I love that song. I think it's absolutely fantastic. That is like some peak Opeth right there. But ultimately, I've put it quite far down because I do feel it was more of a proof of concept than what would come after it, the more successful entries into this particular new era of the band, and we will get into those later on in the list. Right, at number 11, possibly another shocker for you. It's, I've actually got a prop for this one, check me out, but you're going to have to guess which one it is, actually. I'm just going to hold it up. Is it going to be that? Or is it going to be that? Ooh, which could it be? It's Damnation at number 11. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Damnation. I get it, you know, I understand what they were doing, the whole stripped down, melancholy, acoustic side of things, and I feel that it works for a few songs, you know. but I just don't think Damnation holds weight as an album overall. I feel it's better if you treat it as like the first or second half of the double disc of Deliverance and Damnation, as one of them acts as an appropriate palate cleanser to the other. But taken on its own merits, I just feel Damnation wasn't offering me quite enough oomph, you know? There's some great tracks on here, don't get me wrong, you know? Windowpane, incredible, love that track. Death Whispered a Lullaby, also incredible. And then, of course, you've got Weakness at the end, which ironically I would call one of the weakest Opeth tracks that's ever been done, but it's appropriately named, so whatever. But yeah, it's still good. It is still good, and I still do enjoy it, but it is still probably my least favourite of the old Peth era, you know? Right, at number 10, once again lacking the artwork for this one, it's Orchid at number 10. Yeah, Orchid, this is an interesting one. The debut album, of course, I believe it came out in 1995. Don't quote me on that, but I think I'm right. Yeah, first album they ever put out, and I think it's fantastic. I really, really enjoy Orchid. I think it is a absolutely criminally underrated album. A lot of people who I know who listen to a lot of Opeth, they haven't really given the Candlelight albums, you know, those first three, much dues, I'll be honest. And to me, that's a real shame, because you're honestly missing out on a lot of great, great tracks. I feel that as far as debut albums go, in terms of like progressive metal, progressive death metal, that kind of thing, look at what you're kind of comparing it up against. You know, you look at the big names in progressive metal around this sort of time, you know, late 80s, early 90s. You look at Symphony X's self-titled debut, it's kind of garbage. You look at When Dream and Day Unite by Dream Theater, it's mid, it's fine, it's okay, whatever. But Orchid is a genuinely brilliant album. It's rough, it's unpolished, it's raw and unrefined, sure, but honestly that's half the fun. And if you really don't like that kind of production, the 2023 Abbey Road remaster kind of fixes some of those problems and it sounds absolutely immaculate. But you can't fault the songwriting. Everything feels like a band with so much to prove, the world to take on, and they are absolutely not afraid of anything, and they just come out blasting down the gates, and I love it very, very, very much. Right, number 9, we're back to the Little White Book. It's Deliverance. Yeah, this one's actually surprisingly low down the list, I know. A lot of people I know cite Deliverance as one of their favourite Opeth records, and for me, honestly, it still is one of my favourites. It's just that it's up against so much stiff competition that I struggle to really justify myself putting it any higher. Yes, the title track is absolutely incredible and one of the best live songs you could ever experience at an Opeth gig. There's a reason why they seem to bloody play it all the time, because it's amazing. Even if it does have the Lord of the Rings of all outros, you know, it just keeps on going. There's 17,000 endings and it's just like, okay, you can close the song off now, guys. Calm down, calm down. But every track on this is still brilliant, you know. This is very much the dark to Damnation's light, you know. It feels like you really need to take the two albums as a whole, which is honestly why they're so very often paired with each other, you know. But I love Deliverance, I think it's fantastic, and I really do feel a bit bad about putting it down here at number 9, but really, it's not so much of a commentary on how little I think about Deliverance, so much as it is a commentary about how much better I think everything above it is. When you're this excellent of a band, with this stellar of a discography, something as good as Deliverance being at number 9 means that you know you're dealing with one of the greatest of all times here, you know? Right, moving on from that then, at number 8 we have In Corda Venenum, their latest album, and I'm still desperately waiting for a new one. It's been 5 years, guys, come on, let's get on with it, let's get a new one going out. Yeah, I love this album. I've listened to obviously both versions, the English and the Swedish version. I do prefer the Swedish version. I know it sounds a little bit hipster. I'm just like, actually, I think you'll find Mikael Åkerfeldt wrote the album to be in Swedish, therefore it's the best version. No, I don't actually mean it like that. I actually just think it sounds better. You can tell it was written to be in Swedish, and that the English version was kind of like the record label going, yeah, well, we can't market a Swedish album to the masses. You have to do it in English as well. And, you know, you can just imagine Mikael's just like, okay, whatever, we'll do it in English as well, you idiots. But I really do feel this is the best halfway house between their old style and their new style. You've got a lot of those 1970s progressive rock leanings on this album, sure, but there's a lot of really big banger riffs going on as well. There's a lot of really, I don't want to say stank face, because it's not quite stank face that I'm going for here, but there's a lot of, like, you know, nod your head, tap your foot, really kind of grooving heavy metal going on here. It feels like a 1970s prog rock band was given the task of write me a heavy metal album, and this is exactly what they came up with. So, like, take, I don't know, Jethro Tull, for example. Let's just say take Jethro Tull and say, hey, Ian Anderson, write me a heavy metal album. I mean, some of you could argue they actually did do that, but I digress. This is kind of what would come out of it. I think it's brilliant, I think it's wonderful, and honestly, if album 14 carries on the trend of where this was going, I will be pleased as punch. Great record. Right, at number 7 is the second entry of the Candlelight Records. It's Morning Rise. I love Morning Rise. I think this is so good. This contains my favourite Opeth song of all time in the form of Black Rose Immortal, the only time they've ever done a 20-minute epic, and frankly, I hope it stays that way because it makes it more special, quite frankly. Yeah, I love this album. This is the only Opeth album where every song exceeds 10 minutes in length, and you really feel that they are earning their stripes with how long they've made the songs on this. Everything feels earned, you know, everything feels deliberate and really refined. It is a fantastic, brilliant album, really embracing the black metal side of them that they started off with Orchid, you know. There's a lot of the black metal influences going on here, but there's also a lot of folk rock, a lot of prog rock sort of slightly leaning into it. You know, they weren't quite full prog death metal at this point, but they were getting there. They were getting there, and Morning Rise is evidence of the band that they were going to become in the future. I think this is a brilliant album. Everything hits really hard for me, especially Black Rose Immortal. My God, that's an incredible track off one of the most underappreciated albums by the band, so I had to have it just about at the midway point at number 7, Morning Rise. Okay, at number 6 we have got Pale Communion. Yep, this is my favourite album of the new Opeth era, you know, if you really want to use that term. I think this is brilliant. I think this is an absolutely genius album. This is a perfect statement of what they were looking to achieve when they kind of pivoted away from the death metal and moved into that sort of 70s progressive rock style. It's dark, it's mysterious, it's quite original sounding for something which is so steeped in its influences, you know. There is something about the dank, melancholic atmospheres on this that really make it stand above the rest of the newer era of the band. I think it's wonderful. I think it's absolutely perfect from start to finish. There is not a single track on this that I will skip. The artwork is impeccable. The production is fantastic. Everything about this album screams pristine. I think it's wonderful. I think it's brilliant, and I will defend it until the death. This is a fantastic album and deserves its place this high in the list. Okay, we're entering to the top 5 territory now, and I'm certain the Opeth fans out there know what's left, but what order could they possibly be in? Well, let's find out, shall we? It's the last of the Candlelight Records. It's My Arms, Your Hearse at number 5. I don't understand how anybody who appreciates the older styles that Opeth was playing with could ever dismiss this one, you know? You do still sometimes find a lot of seasoned Opeth fans haven't given this one much of a listen, and honestly, I think that's such a crying shame. This, I think more so than any other album in their earlier works, really set the blueprint as to what was coming, you know? Everything that happened after this album, you know? This was the DNA, this was the blueprint. You wouldn't have all those other albums if Mikael Åkerfeldt hadn't decided to sort of push away from the black metal influences and lean more into the death metal and start playing a little bit with the progressive rock side of things. You wouldn't have everything else. This is such a landmark record for the band with some of the coolest songs, best riffing, and contains some of the most creative songwriting I've ever seen from the band. You absolutely cannot afford to miss this one. My Arms, Your Hearse, I know for a lot of people tops their lists, but I still feel the subsequent albums are a little bit better, even if this Grandaddy did set the course for them all. Right, the last one that I don't have the album for, it's number 4 with Watershed. I love Watershed. I really love this one, and I really wasn't quite sure about this one at first, you know. After it followed up from Ghost Reveries, and we started kind of playing a lot more with the progressive rock instrumentation, you know, the heavy keyboard used throughout, some really interesting instrumentation and compositional decisions were made on this record, and I really do think that it's quite unique as a result, and I love it for that. I love how fearless the band felt on this, how they were unafraid to try something radically different and start branching towards what the band would become with Heritage onwards, you know. The Lotus Eater is incredible, Hessian Peel is incredible, Burden is an absolutely stunning ballad. There is nothing on this album that I dislike, everything really lands for me, its experimentation pays off, and it is such an immaculate piece of work that deserves a place this high in the discography, but is only beaten by 3. You know, think about that. Only 3 albums are better than this one. And the first of those 3 albums, at number 3 in our list, is Still Life. Yep, love Still Life, absolutely incredible. If My Arms, Your Hearse was the blueprint, then this was the breakthrough. This is where the band really took off in a progressive rock sense, you know. one of their first concept albums as well, and for me this is one of the most exceptional releases they've ever done. It's got the best opening track of any of their albums with The More, and it really demonstrated just how good the band were at the whole build-up and payoff thing, you know, that slow and low, do-do-do-do-do, you know, and then it just builds and builds and builds and builds, and then you just got Mikael Åkerfeldt comes in with the most gnarly you've ever heard. It's so good. It's absolutely incredible. I love it every single time I hear it. It just blows my mind. You've got some really nice, some soft songs in here, like Benighted and Face of Melinda, where it keeps things a little bit softer, a little bit more gentle. And then it just throws you right back into the meat grinder with Serenity Painted Death, which are some of the coolest riffs the band have ever written. It's so good. It's so good. It's a nearly perfect album from start to finish. I cannot imagine anyone who's a fan of death metal or prog metal listening to this and saying, oh, no, I don't like that, it's rubbish. It's brilliant. It's absolutely immaculate. One of the top 3. It's only beaten by 2. Let's find out what they are. Yeah, let's be real, if you're an Opeth fan, you know the 2 that are left, but the real question is he going to go for the predictable answer, ho 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 ho, or is he going to go for the sort of like newer, more avant-garde, more exciting answer? Well, I hate to disappoint you, it's the predictable answer, because at number 2, it's Ghost Reveries. Yep, this was one of my first exposures to the band. I think it's an incredible example of the band at their peak. Their creative powers were absolutely on fire here. Jens Bogren's mix is incredible on this. Every song sounds so full, so complete, so lively. It's just such a treat to the ears to listen to. Every single song on this is absolutely unreal. It finishes with one of my favourite closing tracks of any Opeth album, which is Isolation Years, which as far as I'm concerned is one of the most beautiful songs ever written and will always get an extreme emotional response from me. I'm like, oh god, it's emotional. You know, it's great. It's really, really good. But that double hit of Ghost of Perdition into Baying of the Hounds is honestly some of the best 20 minutes of my life. It's so ridiculous, it's so intense, and so brutal, and so much beauty as well, hidden behind the dank. I don't understand how anybody could listen to this and not think, hell yeah, Opeth, you know? Great record, great way to get people into the band as well, actually, as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of people were really nervous about this one at first, because it was the first on Roadrunner Records, and people were like, mainstream label, I don't know about that. Showed they had nothing to worry about. Incredible album, number 2, yep. So obviously that means it's number 1 with Blackwater Park. Yeah, I know, it's boring, it's predictable. Wow, everybody puts Blackwater Park at the top. Yeah, I don't care. This is the shining paragon example of how to do progressive death metal. I don't think anyone out there has ever come close to even getting remotely within reach of how good this album is. It's ridiculous. It's so incredible. This is what I would put in the dictionary if somebody was to describe progressive death metal to me. It has every single possible element you could want, all done exquisitely. The death metal is perfect, the prog is perfect, the atmospheric interludes are perfect, everything about this is perfect. I wouldn't change a single thing about this record. It is wonderful. The intro of Leper Affinity, unbelievable. Segueing into Bleak, unbelievable. And the dark melancholy of Harvest, oh my god. And then we just keep going and going and going. And then Patterns in the Ivy leads us into the unbelievable closing title track, which is, for my money, the second best Opeth song, of course, after, you know, Black Rose Immortal. But if we're discounting epics, you know, then yeah, Blackwater Park is the best Opeth song. It's just a treat for the ears. There's no other way to really describe it. It just keeps on giving, it keeps on delivering, and every time you think, surely that's it, there can't be anything else amazing happening on this song, it just keeps getting better, you know? And honestly, I just had to go with my heart. I had to go with my heart, and Blackwater Park, as cliche as it may be, is, for my money, the greatest Opeth album ever made. So there we have it, my personal ranking of the 13 current Opeth studio albums. Now obviously, this is not gospel. Some of you are going to put Heritage at the top, which is fine. Some of you are going to put Blackwater Park at the bottom, which honestly is not fine. What the hell is wrong with you? There is no right or wrong order with this band. All 13 albums are valid. Everything is in contention for the top spot. Everything is in contention for the bottom spot. It's all down to personal choice. And with that being said, I want to know what yours are. I would love to hear how your 13 albums stack up against mine. Where have you put Blackwater Park? Who knows? Where's Still Life? Dunno. Damnation? Please tell me, I'd love to hear it. So if you've made it this far through the video, guys, thank you all so very much for watching as always, and until next time, keep your rhyme signatures pretty odd.